Hey guys, recently I acquired a large lot of Triumph T160 Trident parts. It's basically parts of two motorcycles and a lot of odds and ends parts. And I have a video on this if you want to go back and look at it on the parts, but at the time I hadn't really gone through them very well. But since then I have found some NOS parts in there. Specifically some switches, handlebar switches, and sprockets, a few other little things like that. At the time, I saw this crankshaft. Now, when I just kind of glanced at it, it just looked like any other crankshaft that had been removed from a running motorcycle or a broken motorcycle, whatever. It's dirty, it's covered in gunk, and it looks like it's been, out of a motorcycle for quite a while. But I really didn't examine it very well. Well, lo and behold, it's kind of odd. And let me bring you down here and show you a few things. So we have basically what is a dirty crankshaft. But when I pulled it out and really started looking at it, I started noticing a few things. First of all is this stuff. This is Cosmoline, or an equivalent of Cosmoline. Waxy, oily covering. The sort of thing that would have been put on at the factory or at a parts supply. So the next thing I noticed was the journals. If you look at them, they're all uniform. They're all covered in the same sort of Cosmoline stuff, but they're all uniform in color. The next clue was the bearing ends. If you see this bearing end, how clean it is. Now the Cosmoline is obviously worn off here. The threads are very nice. This bearing surface is still covered. And on the other side, we have basically the same thing. Now it's worn off in this area. The splines are very nice. These threads are very nice, even though they're covered in dirt or gunk. And this bearing surface is still covered. Now those things together don't really tell me whether or not this is a NOS crankshaft or not, because obviously this could have been done by a machine shop. They could have gone and redone this whole crank and then covered it in Cosmoline. This sort of Cosmoline looks like very much older stuff. See, I just revealed a number there. We'll go through the different numbers and whatnot it's on here. To find out if it's a NOS crankshaft or just a remanufactured crankshaft or a remachined crankshaft, or even a home guy could have cleaned up the journals with sandpaper, Scotch-Brite, whatever, and then covered it in some Cosmoline, which you can buy. I actually have some that I'm going to spray this down with after I'm done with this. So to find that out, what I want to do is I'm going to take all the Cosmoline, I call it Cosmoline, it's whatever you want to call it, all this covering, waxy, oily covering, off of the journals, off of the ends, and maybe even a few places on the actual crank itself, although I'm not going to go too crazy on that because it's covered pretty well. I want to take that off, and then I want to do some as accurately measure these journals as I can. And what I'm going to look for is how close they are to stock. Alright guys, for you eagle-eyed viewers out there, you're going to say right away, watching me clean that up, that is not a NOS crankshaft. And you are correct. You can tell it already, you don't even have to measure it. However, it is a very nice crankshaft. It does have a few little signs of wear. I tell you what really fooled me though was this surface right here. I cleaned a little bit of this off, and you can actually see the tooling marks in there, or the grind marks in there, from it being tooled. So did fool me a little bit, but that's okay. I still got a good crankshaft here. It's just a NOS crankshaft. I've never seen one, so you know, you always are trying to find that that Van Gogh in the attic, right? So we know we have a used crankshaft. However, we also know that somebody took care of it. It looks like they cleaned it up, but I don't think that they actually tried to do any polishing on it. If we look down in this journal right here, this is probably the worst journal, and I think you can see there it's got just a little bit of a mark in it. I'm not going to say it's a groove, but it's a mark. You can maybe just feel it in a few areas with your thumbnail, but not really. So I think if whoever owned this would have done a light sanding on that, probably would have polished that right out. All the other ones look very good. In fact, they're almost so good you could almost run it as it is. Goes for the end bearings as well. What's the next thing we need to do? Well, I've got my handy chart here of the critical measurements, and I've just kind of put in blue the critical measurements. We got a left main bearing, center main bearing, right main bearing, and the big end journals. I'm going to check all those to see how close they are to stock, and see if they have been reground. The crankshaft is oriented correctly. This is the left side, this is the right side. So let's start with connecting rod big end journals. I'm not going to look at the measurement on the paper. I'm just going to see what I get. Alright, so that is 1 inch 623.5 thousandths. We see here that is the low side of this big end journal. So at least that journal has not been tampered with, and it looks like this one hasn't either. Last one here, it's 3-cylinder motor, 123.5. So we know that all the Conrod big ends are 123.5. I think I've been saying this wrong. They're 1 inch 623.5 thousandths. So they are all standard size. So we don't have any oversized bearings to deal with. They're all in good shape. They will be able to be polished out and use standard size bearings. Okay, let's do the center main bearings. And this uses a clamshell bearing as well. Come on. Come on. You can do it. Come on. Come on. There we go. Alright, once again I'm going to just take the measurement. I'm not going to look at what I'm shooting for. This is a little tight in here, so. Alright, so 1 inch 917 thousandths. 1.917. Center main bearing journal, 1 inch 9170 to 9175. So we're on the good side of that. Okay, that's 1 inch 916.5 thousandths, which is a little light. Let's check it again. Yeah, 1 inch 917 thousandths. That first measurement may have been wrong, or it might have just been had a little gunk, had a little trash underneath of it. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's right on as well. If it's not, it's a half thousandths off. I don't think that's gonna make a big difference. Also, of course, and I'm not gonna do it here, but you would want to go, I actually scratched this one a little bit taking the measurement. That's the one thing about carbide anvils. They will scratch polished surfaces, so you gotta be careful. You would want to measure in a couple different areas to make sure that you don't have an oblong situation. That's especially important on the conrods because they get that constant pounding on them, and you know, they're stuck out there in the wind. When these are supported by, or the main bearings are supported by the case, so it's not such, I don't think that they would typically go egg-shaped, but your conrod lands actually, or your conrod journals certainly could. I think that you would probably see some indication of that in scarring on the actual polish, but you know, maybe not if it's just real minimal, and you get a lot of mileage on it. You could certainly egg those out. Now this crankshaft does not appear to have a lot of miles on it. Really good condition. It may be in better condition than the one that I saved off of the other motor I took apart for that series of videos. And if you haven't seen that series of videos, I have a series where I take a Trident motor engine completely apart. Next thing is the outer bearings. We got the left side outer bearing. Again, I'm not going to look at it, just going to measure it. Also notice the splines here are in excellent condition. They do show a little bit of wear, as in just normal, but really not a lot, not at all. And again, the threads on this side are good. These threads are, they have very similar threads on the twins as well, which I'm more familiar with, but these are easy to booger up. They're fine threads, and people trying to take the primary off, they mess these threads up. So left side bearing journal. Alright, so we've got 1.245. Look on our paper here, and left main bearing should be 124. I think that's an 8 on 1.245. So that is good. Come over here. We'll check our right side bearing journal. Alright, that is 984. I promise you guys, I'm not making these measurements up. I did not measure these beforehand, but we've now hit every one of them. 0.984 is our measurement here. That's some really nice tolerances there. I did not really expect to hit every one exactly, but we did. And I promise you, I did not manipulate this at all. And I told you, I did not look at the numbers beforehand. I just took the measurement and saw what we got. Let's take a look at a couple other things while we have this crankshaft, just to document this crankshaft. So we've got a E63 here on the end of one of the counterbalances on the outer end, and we also have, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a D and a D. D. Have no idea what either one of those marks means, and I do not see any other marks on the crankshaft at all. So just you know, one of the things I have to do all the time is it's just like identifying unknown parts. You have to identify what you have. So we didn't get a NOS crankshaft, unfortunately. That would have been like, well, it'd have been like finding a diamond ring and when you're looking for a needle in a haystack, is basically how that would be. But we did find a very nice crankshaft. We know that it's on size, and now I'm going to cover it. So I'm going to use a product that I've never used before, and this is not a sponsor. I'm just trying this. I've seen this on the internet. A couple of guys have tried it and it seemed to work alright. This is CRC SP400. Again, not a sponsor. Have never used it. This is the first time I'm going to use it. If in a couple months it looks like it's holding up pretty well, I'll put a link in the description for it and recommend it. But other than that, Never used it. Alright, we'll let that dry and see what it's going to do. I guess it'll harden up a little bit. Okay, it's a couple hours later and it leaves a kind of an interesting like gold amber colored film on it. It's dry but it's tacky. And you can't wipe it off. You just kind of smear it. And it doesn't really stick to your fingers. But it's definitely tacky. So I'm not sure if you're supposed to put another coat on it or not, but I am going to like stand it up and get the parts where it's touching the wood. Alright guys, I appreciate you watching and hope you found some of this educational or interesting or whatever. And until next time, bye.